I couldn't believe my luck when I got promoted to night shift supervisor at the factory. Not only was it a nice pay bump, but the hours meant I could finally attend my daughter Jenna's school events and sports games. For years, I had missed so many milestones because of my inflexible work schedule. But now, I could be there for her like I always wanted. To make the most of my new free time during the day, I decided to renovate the small apartment above our detached garage into a peaceful retreat. It would be the perfect place to crash between shifts without disturbing my wife Karen and Jenna in the main house. Plus, having my own space sounded really appealing. On my first day off, I got to work running an Ethernet cable out to the garage to boost the Wi-Fi signal. Lost in my task, I almost didn't hear the strange noises coming from inside the house. Karen should have been at her job, and Jenna was at her grandparents', so I had no idea who could be home. Curious, I crept into the house, following the sounds to our bedroom. I paused when I reached the old air vent that Karen always complained about. She nagged me for months to replace it, but clearly I had procrastinated too long on that chore. Peering through the slats, my heart seized in my chest. Karen was naked on our bed with a man I recognized, Dan Walters, a neighbor who lived a few streets over. I knew he was recently divorced and had a son in Jenna's grade, but I never imagined he was sleeping with my wife. "Does your husband ever satisfy you like I do?" Dan taunted, thrusting into Karen. "Or is he lacking in that department?" "Don't bring up Nate," Karen protested weakly. "This isn't about him." "Oh, but it is," Dan replied smugly. White-hot rage surged through me. I wanted to burst in there and beat Dan senseless. But in a moment of clarity, I realized I needed evidence. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and discreetly recorded them through the vent slats. Karen let out a long moan. Her body shuddered around Dan. "Doing this in your husband's bed is such a thrill," Dan said after a moment. "It's not just the sneaking around, but knowing I've claimed his territory, you know?" "You're an asshole," Karen replied, but there was no real bite to her words. "This is the last time we do it here, though. It's too risky. Nate could catch us. Not much he could do about it if he did," Dan said arrogantly. "A wuss like him wouldn't have the balls to confront me. He'd probably just cry in the corner like a little bitch." Seething, I forced myself to slip away before they noticed me. Anger and betrayal swirled inside me like a tornado, but I knew I had to keep my cool. I couldn't let Karen know that I knew. Not yet. I had to figure out my next steps for Jenna's sake, if nothing else. She didn't deserve to have her family implode. Determined to keep my composure for Jenna's sake, I threw myself into renovating the garage apartment with a newfound sense of purpose. If I was going to stay in this sham of a marriage until she graduated high school, I needed my own space to retreat to. Somewhere I could escape Karen's betrayal and the utter humiliation I felt. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly on the apartment every spare moment I had. Insulating the walls, updating the kitchenette, installing a small bathroom. I poured all my energy and heartache into making it a livable space. The physical labor kept my mind off the ugliness of my reality. Karen, of course, remained oblivious to the fact that I knew about her affair. She went about her days as if nothing had changed, smiling and chatting with me like we were still the happy couple we once were. It made me sick to my stomach, but I played along. I couldn't let on that anything was amiss. At work, I did my best to focus on my new supervisory duties and not let my personal life affect my performance. But it was a daily struggle not to crumble under the weight of my shattered heart. The only thing keeping me going was Jenna. Sweet, innocent Jenna. She was the light of my life, the one untainted part of my world. I couldn't bear the thought of hurting her or disrupting her life more than necessary. So I resolved to suck it up and maintain appearances until she left for college. Then, and only then, would I serve Karen with divorce papers and take back my life. But my plan hit a snag when Jenna came home from school one day, sobbing and inconsolable. Between hiccuping breaths, she told me that a classmate had cruelly taunted her about her mother sleeping with their friend's dad. My blood ran cold. It seemed Dan Walters couldn't keep his mouth shut about his conquest. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," I murmured, holding Jenna close as she cried into my shoulder. "Your mom and we're going through a rough patch right now. But I promise, nothing will change for you. I will always be here for you, no matter what." Jenna clung to me like I was her life raft. "Are you and Mom getting a divorce?" she asked in a small, scared voice that shattered my heart all over again. I sighed heavily. I hated lying to her, but I also wanted to protect her from the full, ugly truth for as long as possible. "I don't know, sweetheart, but no matter what happens between me and your mom, you will always have a home with me. Always. I will never leave you." That night, after Jenna finally fell into an emotionally spent sleep, I confronted Karen in the kitchen. I had to physically restrain myself from throttling her. "Jenna knows about your affair," I bit out through clenched teeth. "One of her classmates told her today. Our daughter had to hear about her mother's infidelity from a fucking kid, Karen." To her credit, Karen at least had the decency to look horrified and ashamed. Tears welled in her eyes as her face crumpled. "Oh God, Nate. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen, for Jenna to find out like this. You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything you say," I retorted coldly. "You're a liar and a cheater. You betrayed me, betrayed our family. And for what? A sleazeball like Dan Walters? Was it worth it, Karen? Was he worth destroying our marriage and traumatizing our daughter?" Karen dissolved into sobs, her shoulders shaking. Part of me wanted to comfort her out of habit, but I hardened my heart. She didn't deserve an ounce of sympathy from me. "Not anymore. Here's what's going to happen," I said in a low, controlled voice. "You're going to end things with Dan, immediately and permanently. You will be a model wife and mother until Jenna leaves for college. And then you and I are done. I will not let you make a fool out of me any longer." Karen nodded miserably, unable to meet my eyes. "I'll do whatever you want, Nate. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you or Jenna. I was weak and stupid. It will never happen again, I swear it." "Your word means nothing to me now," I replied flatly. "The only reason I'm not filing for divorce this second is for Jenna's well-being. But trust me, the second she's off to school, I'm gone. I hope your boy toy was worth it." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving my sobbing, unfaithful wife in my wake. I had said my piece. Now I just had to make it through the next 2 years with my sanity and dignity intact. But I had no idea just how complicated and messy things were about to get. Karen's betrayal was only the tip of the iceberg. I was about to uncover secrets that would rock my world even further. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself fully into my new role as night shift supervisor. It was a welcome distraction from the turmoil in my personal life. I could lose myself in the routines and responsibilities of work, if only for a little while. At home, Karen was walking on eggshells around me. She had ended things with Dan per my demand, but I could tell she was miserable. Part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction at her suffering. She deserved to feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. The other part felt hollow, like I had already mourned the death of our marriage long ago. Jenna, bless her heart, seemed to be coping as well as could be expected. She was a resilient kid, but I could see the strain this was putting on her. She spent a lot of time with her friends or at sports practice, perhaps to avoid the tension at home. I didn't blame her one bit. With the garage apartment finally renovated, I started spending more and more time out there. It was a sanctuary, a place where I could be alone with my thoughts without Karen's mournful eyes following me around. She had tried to talk to me a few times, to apologize or explain herself, but I shut her down immediately. I wasn't ready to hear any excuses. One evening, as I was getting ready to leave for my shift, Jenna caught me alone in the kitchen. She looked nervous, chewing on her bottom lip in that way she did when she had something difficult to say. "Dad?" She ventured hesitantly. Can I ask you something? About you and Mom?" I felt a lump form in my throat, but I nodded, bracing myself. "Of course, honey. You can ask me anything." Jenna twisted her hands together anxiously. "Are you going to get a divorce? Like for real?" My heart clenched at the fear and sadness in her eyes. As much as I wanted to protect her, she deserved to know the truth. Slowly, I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. Once you're off to college, your mom and I are getting divorced. I'm so sorry, but after what she did, I don't think I can ever forgive her or trust her again." Jenna's eyes welled with tears that she bravely blinked back. "I understand," she said in a small voice. I want you to know that no matter what, you'll always be my dad. And I love you." She threw herself into my arms then, hugging me fiercely. I held her tight, eyes squeezed shut as I fought my own tears. I love you too, baby girl. So much. You'll always be my world. After that conversation, an unspoken understanding seemed to exist between Jenna and I. She knew the score, knew that our family, as we knew, was coming to an end. But she also knew that my love for her was unconditional and unwavering. That seemed to give her strength and resilience to get through this nightmare. As for Karen, she remained in the periphery, a ghost of the woman I once knew. She kept her distance, perhaps sensing that I was still too raw to be around her much. I didn't miss her presence, though. My heart had hardened towards her completely. The only time I really interacted with her was at Jenna's school and sports events. We put on a united front for appearance's sake, but it was strained and awkward. I'm sure people could sense the tension between us, but no one said anything. They were probably too polite or afraid to pry. It was at one of Jenna's softball games that I first noticed Karen's friend Diane watching me with a certain intensity. Diane was around our age, divorced with a daughter on Jenna's team. She was objectively an attractive woman, slim and blonde with a warm, friendly smile. Under normal circumstances, I could see myself being interested, but these were far from normal circumstances. I was still very much married, even if it was a marriage in name only at this point. And the last thing I wanted was to get tangled up in some tawdry affair like the one that had destroyed my life. So I made a point to be polite, but keep my distance from Diane. Of course, she didn't seem to take the hint. For the next few games, I noticed her making excuses to talk to me, to laugh at my jokes, to casually touch my arm. I try not to read into it too much, but my instincts told me she was interested in being more than just friends. Finally, after one particularly painful attempt at flirting, I pulled Diane aside after a game one day. "Look, Diane," I said as gently as I could, "I think I know what you're doing here. And under different circumstances, I might be interested, but I'm still a married man, regardless of what's going on between me and Karen. I can't in good conscience start anything up with you or anyone else right now. It wouldn't be right." To her credit, Diane took the rejection in stride, though I spotted a flash of disappointment in her eyes. "I understand," she said with a rueful smile. "Can't blame a girl for trying though, right? You're one of the good ones, Nate." I shrugged, suddenly feeling very tired. "I'm really not. If I was, I wouldn't be in this situation to begin with." Diane surprised me by placing a comforting hand on my arm. "Don't beat yourself up too much," she murmured. "Sometimes people just change, or show you who they really are after years of pretending. The fact that you're sticking around for your daughter shows what kind of man you truly are." Her words struck a chord, and I felt a lump form in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear something like that from someone other than Jenna. Clearing my throat, I managed a small smile. "Thanks, Diane. I appreciate that." She squeezed my arm once before letting go. "Anytime. And look, if you ever do find yourself single again, well, let's just say I'd love to take you out for a drink. As friends, of course." I couldn't help but chuckle at her persistence. "You're relentless, you know that. But I'll keep that in mind." Diane winked, seemingly satisfied, and sauntered off to collect her daughter. I watched her go, feeling a confusing swirl of emotions. Part of me felt a hint of something like hope, a feeling I hadn't experienced in longer than I could remember. Maybe, just maybe, there was life after Karen and her betrayal. Maybe I could pick up the shattered pieces of my heart and move on eventually. The thought was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. For now, though, I had to focus on just getting through each day, being the best father I could be to Jenna. She was my top priority, my reason for carrying on. As long as I had her, I could survive this. I could make it to the light at the end of the tunnel. The weeks, months that followed were some of the most emotionally taxing of my life. Keeping up the charade of a happy family unit for Jenna's sake was utterly exhausting. Karen and I could barely look at each other most days without an argument erupting. The resentment and pain were like a living, breathing thing between us. My only solace was the time I got to spend with Jenna. Whether it was at her softball games, school events, or just hanging out at home, she was my lifeline. Her bright smile and easy laughter were the only things getting me through those dark days. I lived for the moments I could forget about Karen's betrayal and just be a dad. Of course, Jenna wasn't oblivious to the tension. She was a smart, perceptive kid, I knew she could sense that her mom and I were just going through the motions, putting on an act. It must have been so confusing and heartbreaking for her. There were times when I caught her watching Karen and I with this haunted, wary look in her eyes, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for our family to finally implode. It broke my heart to see her so anxious and unhappy. In those moments, I wanted nothing more than to pull her into my arms and promise her that everything would be okay, that no matter what happened between her mother and I, she would always have me. I was her safe place to land. But even as I thought those words, I knew they would ring hollow. Because the truth was I wasn't okay. I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of Karen's lies and betrayal. Some days, it took everything I had just to plaster on a smile and get through my shifts at work, let alone be an emotionally available parent. The rage would hit me in waves, blinding, all-consuming fury at what Karen had done. How could she, after over 15 years of marriage, after I had loved her and provided for her, how could she so callously throw it all away on an affair? An affair with a sleazeball like Dan Walters, no less? Then the sadness would wash over me, leaving me feeling hollowed out and numb. This woman, who I had loved more than life itself, was a stranger to me now. The Karen I thought I knew would never have been capable of such cruelty and deceit. I had built my life upon a lie without even realizing it. There were nights where I would lie awake in the garage apartment, my mind spinning as I went over every interaction, every moment with Karen, searching for signs. Clues that I had missed that she was unhappy or unfaithful. But there was nothing, no hint that she had been living this separate life behind my back. She really was that good of an actress. The thought made me feel sick to my core. How could I ever trust another woman again after this? How could I let someone get that close, only for them to betray me in such a devastating way? It was safer to just close myself off, to never let anyone in again. But then I would remember Diane and her warm smiles, her gentle flirtations. I tried not to read too much into her obvious interest in me, but I couldn't deny that it felt nice, flattering. Like maybe, just maybe, I could have a future beyond the train wreck of my marriage. Diane never pushed too hard, never made me uncomfortable with her attentions. But she also made it clear that she was interested, that she found me attractive as a man, not just a friend or Jenna's softball coach. It had been so long since I had felt desired and wanted by someone. Karen and I may have still been sharing a home, but our intimacy had fizzled out long before her affair. Part of me felt guilty for even entertaining thoughts of Diane or any woman that wasn't Karen. Wasn't I still a married man for better or worse? But then I remembered the harsh, cruel words Karen's lover had spat about me, calling me a wuss and saying I didn't have the balls to confront him. The humiliation and emasculation I had felt in that moment came rushing back with startling clarity. While I had confronted Karen in my own way, I had laid down the law. She would be a faithful wife until Jenna graduated, and then we were through. I was taking back my life, my self-respect, and maybe, just maybe, I could open myself up to the possibility of finding love again someday. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. After being part of a couple for so long, could I really go back to being a single man? Did I even know how to date anymore? The world felt like it had shifted on its axis, and I was struggling to find my footing. Through it all, Jenna remained my anchor, my reason for carrying on. I knew that no matter how bleak things seemed, I had to be strong for her. She was watching me, learning how to handle trauma and heartbreak. If I fell apart, what would that teach her? So I squared my shoulders and pushed forward, day by agonizing day. I coached her softball team with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. I attended every school event. I helped her with her college applications. Anything to create happy memories to overshadow the darkness that had descended upon our family. And slowly, so slowly, I started to feel a shift within myself. It was subtle at first, a genuine belly laugh at one of Jenna's silly jokes, a moment of pure joy watching her pitch a perfect game. Little by little, the weight on my shoulders started to feel a bit lighter. The rage and sadness still lingered, but they weren't consuming me quite as intensely. I started looking to the future instead of remaining stuck in the past. Jenna would be graduating soon, and then my life with Karen would be over. A new chapter would begin, though I had no idea what that would look like yet. All I knew was that I had survived the worst betrayal of my life, and I was still standing, battered, but not broken. There were even days when I could look at Karen without feeling that searing ache of hatred and resentment. Don't get me wrong, I would never be able to forgive or trust her again after what she did. But maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to let go of the anger, if only for my own peace of mind. Because holding on to that fury, letting it eat away at me, that was letting Karen win. It was giving her far too much power over my life, my happiness. And after everything, I refused to let her take anything else from me. So I forced myself to take deep breaths whenever I felt that white-hot rage starting to bubble up. I pictured releasing it like a breath of air, letting it dissipate and float away from me. It wasn't easy, and there were many setbacks. But I was determined to not let Karen's sins continue to poison me. As Jenna's high school graduation drew nearer, I could feel a sense of nervous anticipation building within me. This was it, the light at the end of the very long, dark tunnel I had been traversing. Soon, the lie that was my marriage would be over. I could finally begin to pick up the pieces and move on with my life. Part of me felt guilty for being so eager to be rid of Karen. We had built a life together, after all. Over 15 years of memories, both good and bad. Could I really just turn my back on all of that? But then I would remember that night, the night I discovered her affair. I would hear Dan's smug, taunting voice in my head and feel that same sickening humiliation all over again. Karen had made her choice when she betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. I didn't owe her anything anymore. So as Jenna walked across that stage in her cap and gown, beaming with pride and excitement for her future, I felt an enormous sense of relief. We had made it. She was off to college and the next chapter of her life. And I could start living mine again, too. The weeks after graduation were a blur of packing up Jenna's things and getting her settled into her dorm. Karen and I were civil, even managing to be in the same room without sniping at each other. I think we were both just going through the motions, knowing our time as a family unit was coming to an end. Finally, it was the night before Jenna was due to leave for school. We had taken her out for one last family dinner, trying to make more happy memories to counteract the pain of the last couple years. Jenna had smiled and laughed with us, seemingly relaxed and at peace with everything. But after we returned home, she pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. "Dad, can I talk to you for a minute?" Alone? Concerned, I ushered her out to the garage apartment, away from Karen's prying eyes and ears. Once we were alone, Jenna surprised me by throwing her arms around me in a fierce hug. "I'm going to miss you so much," she mumbled against my shoulder. I could feel her body shaking with suppressed sobs. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself after I'm gone?" Hearing her voice wobble with emotion undid me. I hugged her back just as tightly, feeling my own tears prickle at the corners of my eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," I murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm the one who should be worried about you. This is such a huge transition." Jenna pulled back, her eyes overbright and cheeks splotchy. "I'll be fine, Dad. I'm ready for this." "But she trailed off, sniffling. "You've been so strong this whole time for me. But I know it's killing you inside with everything that's happened between you and Mom. I can't stand the thought of you being alone, miserable and heartbroken." A lump formed in my throat at her words. My brave, selfless little girl was worried about me when she was the one heading off to start her adult life. I cupped her face in my hands, brushing away the tears on her cheeks with my thumbs. "Jenna, listen to me," I said fiercely. "You don't need to worry about me, okay? I'm going to be just fine. This situation with your mom, it's been one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, I won't lie. But you helped me get through it with your love and support. As long as I have you in my life, I'll never truly be alone." She sniffled again, managing a watery smile. "I love you, Daddy. No matter what happens, you'll always be my number one guy. Okay?" A tear slipped free, trailing down my cheek. "And you'll always be my best girl, baby. Always." We held each other for a long moment, drawing strength. I knew in that moment that no matter what lay ahead for me, I would be okay, because I had raised an incredible young woman who loved me fiercely and unconditionally. With her by my side, even from miles away, I could face anything. Finally, Jenna pulled away, swiping at her eyes. I should get to bed. It's going to be a big day tomorrow. She managed a wobbly smile. Don't be a stranger, okay? Call me whenever you need me. I will, I promised, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Now get some rest. I love you, Jenna. Love you too, Dad. After she left, I stood alone in the apartment for a long while, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. This was it, the end of an era, the closing of one chapter of my life. Instead of feeling saddened, though, I felt free, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, allowing me to finally breathe again. The future was a blank slate, full of possibilities. For the first time in a long time, I actually felt hopeful about what lay ahead. Sure, there would be struggles and setbacks. Picking up the pieces after a betrayal like Karen's wouldn't be easy. But I was strong. She hadn't broken me, no matter how hard she may have tried. I thought about Diane and her warm, flirtatious smiles. Was it too soon to take her up on that friendly drink she had offered? Part of me bucked at the idea of jumping into anything resembling dating so quickly after my separation. But another part felt intrigued, excited even by the prospect of putting myself out there again. Shaking my head at myself, I headed into the small bathroom to get ready for bed. Only time would tell what my next chapter would look like. But one thing was for certain, I was done living in the past, haunted by Karen's betrayal. It was time to look forward, to embrace whatever came next with an open mind and an open heart. Who knew? Maybe there was an amazing woman out there just waiting for me to find the courage to open myself up again. Or maybe I would decide that the single life was for me, at least for a while. Either way, the decision was mine and mine alone. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Like a great burden had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Karen's affair, while excruciatingly painful, hadn't destroyed me like she probably hoped it would. No, I was still here, still standing, still fighting. And come tomorrow, I would be a free man again, ready to embrace life on my own terms. The future had never looked brighter.